Well, Brian, thanks for inviting me to this.
Thank you for coming.
And it was an easy decision when he said, we're having a birthday celebration for Bob. I said yes before even knowing where it was. Hopped in the car in Bloomington, Indiana, and drove here. But I've got a long history with Bob, like many of you do. And it was interesting listening today because so many people, it's almost like my words were coming out of your mouths. We all have had such similar, that's scary. We've had such similar experiences with Bob. I apologize for not having the present. I'll share the chili with you. I've, like most of you, I've been intrigued by X-ray diffraction and X-ray powder diffraction since I was an undergraduate. And I remember well going to an ACA meeting in Charlottesville. I think it was my second year grad school. And there was a guy there named Ray Young, whom I didn't know. I was a first year grad student. And he talked about the Rietveld method. And I came home to Penn State, where my advisor, George Brindley, was a clay mineralogist. I was studying clay mineralogy. I said, this is an unbelievable thing where you can actually fit the entire powder diffraction. I was just blown away. And so never did I imagine that my future would shortly be at Los Alamos. That's an aerial view of Los Alamos. And I arrived in Los Alamos in 1980. And one of the things that brought me there was the fact that the Earth Sciences department there had at the time, one of the few new automated powder diffractometers outside of major facilities. And now it's standard in many labs, but we had a very nice lab there. Nobody was doing anything automated. And in fact, we had strip chart recorders. I still have many of my strip charts. I don't know why, but I can't get rid of them. And at the time, I started using DBW with a couple of Bob Snyder's students, including Jim. And I thought, wow, I'm doing Rietveld refinement. And probably most of you know that I only thought I was doing Rietveld refinement. We did some interesting things with DBW, but Bob came and I learned quickly about GSAS. And I heard about this guy over at the neutron facility. There were a number of crystallographers at Los Alamos. And naturally, even though at the time, I think there were maybe 6,000 people at Los Alamos, all the crystallographers knew everybody. And within the first year or two being there, I actually went down to that neutron facility in the canyon and collected neutron powder data. And I did nothing with those data. They were not useful. But later, this guy, Bob von Dreele, came. These people said, there's a guy over there who knows about Rietveld refinement. Very quickly, we got together, and I started using GSAS. And this is an earlier picture of Bob, but this is a picture of Bob's collaborator then. Many of you know the early GSAS was Larson and von Dreele, then it was von Dreele and Larson. And that's Alan Larson. He was one of the old-timey crystallographers at Los Alamos. There were a lot of crystallographers scattered around national labs, or what were then scientific labs, just after the war. And Alan was one of these guys. And so I was able to start working with Bob on GSAS. Yeah. And you can imagine, most of you have used GSAS, and probably few of you have had the opportunity to run over to see Bob once a week or call him up on the phone. And it's almost like sitting down with the God next to you and having a problem with this. So very quickly it became second nature. So I went to the GSAS workshops. This was the second one in 1991. This newsletter was from 1990. They used to send these out by snail mail. And there's a picture of Bob at the top and Alan Larson down at the bottom. And there's a couple of interesting things in this. This was something I actually had a hard copy of in my old GSAS manual. One is that says, we're pleased to have Dr. Hugo Rietveld as one of our speakers. I actually don't remember if he came, but it says he was scheduled.
He did, yeah.
But I went to that and I don't remember him. But the other interesting thing is I love this. There are many other changes, blah, 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 blah. If you have an older distribution, send us a tape and we'll send you the newest version. That's how it was done. That's how it was done. Send us a tape.
TK50 tape.
TK50 tape.
Wow.
And one really remarkable change, I think we've lived, those of us, Jeff Post and I have worked together for many years. We've lived through an incredible time where when we started out, Bob mentioned, or people who worked with Bob mentioned the mainframe computers. You'd put your cards in at night and go home and hope you had a printout and not a one-page thing saying something screwed up. We ran GSAS on a VAX computer, which had probably the power of maybe your cell phone.
Not even.
Nowhere near.
You're probably nowhere near. And what was remarkable at that time, we used the VMS operating system, which was really a nice multi-tasking, multi-user operating system. And we would submit a job to do a set of cycles of refinements, and then you could submit 2 or 3 other jobs, and they would timeshare. And it was so inefficient that I would do 3 or 4 refinements at the same time. We kept this computer running for months and months and months with absolutely no null time. You'd put one in, put 3 or 4 in, one would finish, get on it, get on at night on your dial-up at home, put a new one in. And it's kind of gives you an example of how GSAS has progressed over the years. But the amazing thing was, you can imagine for someone who is interested in fine-grained materials, doing powder diffraction, and right at the beginning of the Rietveld method, to have Bob across the lab from me, it's like dying and going to heaven. And he was a young guy then. I was a young guy then. And we collaborated constantly. I wasn't in the same place as Bob, but we did a lot of things together. And I echo what everyone else said. He was so receptive to questions, and he always helped me, and would either call him. I think probably I called him because I think email was in its infancy. and I actually don't remember exactly how we accomplished this, but I would call him with a question about GSAS, and he would say, let me get back to you. And he would get me a new version somehow. You remember how you got it to me?
Oh, yes, TK50.
I don't know. But he said, here, try this. The next day, it was incredible. It was as if Bob was sitting over there waiting for me to call to work on this, and everyone's echoed that. It's just incredible. And as a result, I was able to learn a tremendous amount about GSAS, and I'm with Sven. I use the old GSAS because you use it day in and day out for 20 years. You don't even have to think about what you're doing. So sorry, Brian, I don't use your version. I tried to use your version. I said, I can't figure this out.
I'll survive.
So you go back to the old ones.
Some people do.
And sorry, Sven showed this already, but we were able to work together in the early years because we had a very nice powder diffraction lab. Bob worked at Lance, and this was the first thing I think that Bob and I did together was this joint paper. And I echo Sven's comment that it's an incredibly powerful combination that not enough people take advantage of. But we were able to, this was right at the time when the new high TC in quotes, superconductors came out, and boy, Los Alamos jumped on this, and Art Williams was championing this, and we ran collected both neutron and X-ray data, and did this joint refinement that was beautiful. Bob was constantly helping me with some of my work with clay minerals, and because I was so enthusiastic about powder diffraction, because the materials I worked with were very fine grained. Jeff talked about the difficulties of finding a single crystal, and I challenge anyone in here to find a mountable single crystal. 1 or 2 people have done it, for example, kaolinite, and it's just very difficult. So the Rietveld method with powder diffraction data it's just a match made in heaven for studying the structures of clay minerals, with a few caveats. And Bob and I worked together on refining the crystal structure of kaolinite, the non-hydrogen positions of kaolinite, using X-ray data, and published this in 1989. I learned so much from Bob about how to extract the maximum amount of information. Crystallite size information, strain information. This was a two-component refinement, but of all my publications, this is probably the most highly cited. So, Bob, thank you for helping me with that. It's my favorite publication, partly because my PhD advisor, his #1 publication was an old-fashioned refinement of the crystal structure of kaolinite using the methods where he cut out the peaks and weighed them to get the integrated intensities. So I hope he was smiling down on this. Shortly after that, it's kind of a golden age for refilled refinement. Everything is exploding at the same time. And so Jeff Post and I put together a short course with the Mineralogical Society of America on, we were trying to figure out what to call it. There's a lot of new stuff going on, so we called it Modern Powder Diffraction. And we had a short course at the Geological Society of America meeting in 1989 in St. Louis. And along with that, the MSA, Mineralogical Society of America, publishes these reviews in mineralogy book. And Bob contributed to that. This is one of their most purchased volumes, even now. It's still purchased, and so it's still germane.
You just put the words modern in quotes now?
Maybe we should just white it up.
That's right.
But you can see some of the familiar names on here. Bob Snyder is on there, and there's Jeff Post, Larry Finger, you've heard about today. So a lot of people active in the community, but we thought we've got to have something on neutron powder diffraction. And Bob put together, well, I think it's still one of the most readable discussions of neutron powder diffraction ever. There. And so that's Bob's chapter. That's Bob presenting at that short course. Not really. I tried to find old pictures of you, and back in the day, we like somebody said, we didn't have our cell phones, so I might have some slides of you somewhere. But Bob taught at the short course, and it was a remarkable experience doing that. We all learned a lot. We've all heard about Bob as a mentor. And I've had 2 or 3 mentors in my career, and I think a lot of young people think, well, you only have mentors when you're starting out. And having a mentor or 2 or 3 is a tremendously valuable thing. And I've had a couple. Bob Reynolds was one. Bob Von Dreele was the other. And Bob Reynolds isn't around. Bob Von Dreele is around. And he's taught me so much over the years. I was talking with Jeff Post, and I said, not only does Bob know a lot about diffraction, but he's just very insightful about a lot of things. And so you can come to him with a question about something, and you're going to learn something almost every time. One of my favorite things is his guidance with probably more likely to the old GSAS. In the old days, when you did a refelt refinement, you let the scale factor go. And then you added in the background and the unit cell parameters, et cetera. But you didn't let everything else go. He said, you don't want to do that, because if you do, you're going to get a pie in the face. I've used that so often. And later
It's actually from Angus Lawson.
Oh, was it from Angus? Oh, sorry, Angus. But later he would just say, did you get a pie? I got a pie. We've also heard that there's more to Bob than meets the eye. And I was amazed one time, maybe you'll be amazed by this. We used to go to the Los Alamos County Fair, and my wife and I were wandering around in there one day at the county fair, and lo and behold, here's a little miniature steam engine, Robert Von Dreele. What? how did he have time to do that? You remember that?
Vaguely, but it wasn't that.
It wasn't that, I found that. I was hoping you wouldn't notice.
That's way too fancy.
Yeah.
But there really was a lot to him. Like Jeff said, he was an amateur astronomer. But Bob, just for everything, happy birthday, but thank you so much for, you've been a mentor of mine for my entire scientific career. I should mention that I overlapped with Bob pretty much your whole time.
Yeah.
Bob left, and I was a staff member in Earth and Environmental Sciences, and they said, "Oh, we need someone to take over Bob von Dreele's position." And you take yours. And I said, I'd worked at Lance, and I'd worked a little bit with Bob on Hippo and Yusheng, and they said, "How about if you do Bob's position? You can do it half-time and do your..." So me doing his job half-time, not surprisingly, Sven never even knew I was there. But Bob, it's been incredible. I wish you more years, and I hope you're around to mentor me for many years to come.
Just up the road.
Yep.